the story of Indonesia's love affair with BRICS throughout the years to understand that this is not a recent thing. Indonesia's been involved with BRICS since the very beginning. So maybe then after that, we can all have our own assumptions about Indonesia's motivations. So do I start from here? Okay. During the early years of our engagement with BRICS, so that was during SBY's presidency, it was, I can characterize it with cautious interest and observation rather than active participation. So if you see some of the quotes I picked here coming straight from the mouth of the President SBY himself, he was saying a lot of positive things about BRICS, but then he was also very cautious in expressing any sort of interest about joining or participating in BRICS. He was keen on observing BRICS, and at the same time, also this period we saw the emergence of BRICS as a significant voice in global economic and political matters as well. So Indonesia kept an eye on developments within the grouping. So we should also remember that the early 2010s was the aftermath of the global financial crisis, which highlighted the vulnerabilities of the Western-led global financial system. And I think this was the key word during that time. President Yudhoyono shared similar concerns to those displayed by BRICS mostly about the underrepresentation of developing countries in global financial institutions. So this was the narrative that he used a lot during that time, 2010, 2011, 2012. And Indonesia also, kept saying the same narratives about bringing such reforms, but we did this mostly through our involvement in the G20. So when we first joined G20, this was the narrative that we brought about the underrepresentation of developing countries in global financial institutions. What was interesting actually in 2010 when South Africa becomes the S of BRICS, there was this circling narrative going around about Indonesia joining BRICS at the time actually, making it the double I in BRICS, so BRIIC at the time. But then again, of course, those were rumors circling around, but Indonesia was definitely not interested in joining BRICS at the time. But we also recognize that we have been having at the time growing bilateral relationships with all BRICS countries, and especially with China and India. At the time, they were increasingly becoming important trading partners for Indonesia. But still, Indonesia remained non-committal about joining or engaging BRICS as a member of the group. Our foreign policy remained firmly anchored in ASEAN and other multilateral forums. G20 was definitely one that we were really proud of, and that was basically the center of our multilateral forums concentration, especially from President Yudhoyono. President Joko Widodo was elected in 2014, and his stance towards BRICS has also been basically continuing with what the previous president has done, but he basically sort of like left BRICS not very high in the priority because he was really also a G20 person. He loved going to G20 meetings. He probably not so much about ASEAN meetings, but this is Chatham House, I believe. But he was very keen on G20, and that was his first and foremost multilateral forums that he basically loved going to G20 meetings. So BRICS was sort of like sidelined in the narrative for Indonesia up until probably about the second part of his administration, so around 2000s. Probably more or less during the COVID, when Indonesia was trying to seek for more partners, trying to sort of like build new bridges with different countries, looking at some of the problems we were having during the COVID. So, but he was very much focusing toward economic growth and infrastructure development. So aside from G20, a lot of his focus was mostly on bilateral engagements as well. So BRICS, yes, remain in the narrative, but it's not so much in the focus, especially during his first administration. And since 2010, actually, BRICS has sent its representatives to encourage Indonesia to participate in the summit. So invitations kept coming in, but Indonesia politely, turned the invitations down until 2023, last year, when Indonesia finally accepted the invitation to attend the summit. But with Jokowi, he played down, any talks of joining. Some of the narrative that was going around was that it was important for Indonesia to accept the invitation last year because we were chair of ASEAN. So we were sort of like not really representing Indonesia, but more sort of like the ASEAN as a grouping. So that was part of the playing down of Indonesia's direct or immediate engagement with BRICS. And as you see, coming back from the summit in Johannesburg, you can see some of the quotes that I copied here. He was very cautious. He kept saying about conducting a thorough study and calculation. As the question asked earlier by Sharon, whether or not there has been a cost-benefit calculation, that was what he was saying at the time. We need to do a thorough study and calculation. We do not want to make any hasty decision. He mentioned repeatedly, we are not in a rush to join. Basically, yes, BRICS is important. There might be interest, but there's no rush in it. There is no urgent matter whatsoever for us to join. And what he also said was that we need to ensure that such a move does not compromise our relationship with other global partners. So that's what he said. Yes, he had good things to say about BRICS, as always. He said that joining BRICS would align with our vision for a more inclusive global economy. There are advantages, implications of such partnership, but he remained non-committal about joining. But he did attend the summit, and that was, I think, some of the sort of like a new picture for Indonesia's engagement with BRICS, because Jokowi was there personally. Instead, at the time, Indonesia saw that its national interests was best served by joining OECD. It was it's the first Southeast Asian countries to apply for the accession. If successful, it will be the third Asian members after Japan and South Korea. And at the time, again, was last year, 2023, the OECD rather than BRICS was considered the route to get there, to Indonesia being, making the top 5 largest economies in the world. So that was basically what Jokowi was positioning himself with regards to BRICS. Now, with our new president in office for 10 days now, Prabowo has been talking about BRICS even before taking office. So 2022, 2023, he had things to say about BRICS, both in his capacity as Minister of Defense and in his capacity as a presidential candidate. So some of the things he said in 2023 was more or less in the campaigning, sort of like campaigning period. He had good things to say about BRICS, but that's the same thing as previous presidents as well. For example, he said BRICS platform that can provide significant economic opportunities. Last year, he said we are open to exploring partnerships with BRICS, but we must ensure that any decision supports our national interests and does not alienate our existing allies. So these are some of the things he said. But you can tell that from some of his narratives, he was more open to it than Jokowi. He has not had much to say about OECD and Indonesia's current process in OECD, but he has always had a lot of things to say about BRICS. Although he was, before taking office, he was not making any reference about his intention about joining. After taking office 10 days ago, of course, then it's completely different. It took a lot of people by surprise, not because of our engagement, but not because of joining BRICS itself. I mean, as I said, we were already sort of like seeing from or understanding from his narrative that he's interested in BRICS, but we did not expect such a strong, committed statements coming from the palace. So he sent our new foreign minister there. And just 2 days ago, Prabowo himself issued a press statement saying that this is an official translation from the statement, but basically he said, Indonesia needs to have a presence in that forum. We want to participate in all forums, which is still the same narrative that he's been saying. He wants to be friends with everybody. He has this good neighbor policy. Indonesia can be tied to specific blocks, but we aim to be everywhere. So, and there is this, the last part of that statement was exactly what Joanne said earlier about being FOMO. We see major economies like India, Brazil, China, South Africa there, and some of our neighbors have already expressed intention to join. So we don't want to be left behind. A few days before that, the press statement issued by the foreign minister after Kazan summit, he affirmed Indonesia wants to join BRICS. So there is this expression of intent about joining BRICS. Yes, we became partners this year, but we already expressed our desire, our intent to join BRICS, which is interesting because maybe he's the same as me. He doesn't understand what the president wants, but he has to say something about motivation. So what it says in the statement is that joining BRICS is an active and free political manifestation of Indonesia's foreign politics. It doesn't mean we join certain camps, but we actively participate in all forums. We also see that BRICS priorities are in line with the work program of the cabinet, including related to food and energy security, eradicating poverty, or advancing human resources. So again, listing a number of motivations. So this is basically, where we are at the moment. So again, a partnership status in BRICS was not the same as a full-fledged membership, as partners would not have the ability to vote on bloc affairs or be granted full participation rights at meetings and summits. But this is where we are at the moment. So the three questions that I mentioned earlier, why, what for, what's next? Why and what for, like I said, only President Prabowo knows. But the why we can try to understand from the statement from the foreign ministers. There are things that in BRICS priorities that are in line with Indonesia's priorities at the moment. He mentioned about food security, energy security, and the list goes on. So that's the official answer to the why question. The official answer to the what for question, again, looking at it from the official statement from the foreign minister, by joining BRICS, Indonesia seeks to elevate the common interests of developing countries or the global south. The statement said, we view BRICS as the right platform to discuss and advance the shared interests of the global south. So that's the official what for question. So what's interesting also to discuss the what next question, and maybe I'll end my remarks with trying to answer this what's next question. I have 5 points to say here. The first one, in essence, is really too early to tell. Questions about impact, questions about what it will bring for Indonesia, questions about what Indonesia will bring to BRICS, I think it's way, way too early to tell. And I do think that it's rather unproductive to try to answer this question now. My second point, an interesting thing, and I think it relates to what the question earlier about the sort of like a thorough analysis. Just 2 days ago, there was a comment from the parliament saying that this will be a long process and that the parliament will discuss thoroughly with the foreign ministry. So this is interesting, expressing intent first and do a thorough discussion afterwards. So I think, I doubt this would be sort of like a clear, in-depth cost-benefit analysis, but let's just eagerly wait for, what happens with this discussion. Because for the time being, that is what is being informed to the public. My third point is the OECD accession. What's going to happen with it? Just a few months ago, in May 2024, the meeting of the OECD Ministerial Council has adopted the OECD accession roadmap for Indonesia. So the roadmap for the process is there. So I think Thailand has not gone there yet. So we're there. There is the roadmap for Indonesia, which they say takes usually about 3 years to complete. There is no official statement coming from the new president just yet about this process. So we're just assuming that it's, moving on, proceeding as planned. There is no deadline for the completion of the process. Usually it takes 3 years. That's the official information. The technical reviews will cover almost every area of public policy, including open trade and investment, public governance, anti-corruption efforts, as well as the effective protection of environment and action on climate. Just earlier this month, so about 2 weeks before Prabowo took office, we launched the OECD accession portal. So this is a digital system that monitors Indonesia's process to become full member of OECD. So it serves as a platform for, we have now the OECD national team, which is in charge of making sure everything goes in line. So just not even 1 month ago, this portal was launched. So we can just safely assume that the process is going on as planned. There is no formal restriction that would prevent Indonesia from becoming both a member of BRICS and OECD. No such thing as a formal restriction. The same way, like, joining BRICS doesn't mean we have to keep a distance from EU or from the US. The same way that, joining OECD should not make us keep a distance between Indonesia and BRICS countries like China and Russia. And I do think that OECD and BRICS are not rigid blocks. So each member remains free to engage in cooperation with any other country. So I think that needs to be kept in mind. However, what would be interesting is that if we are faced with choosing only one to join, if the president suddenly decides we can only join one and not the other, and I do think that when it comes to this, there are several considerations that need to be taken into account. And questions like which forum values Indonesia's position more, these questions that have definitely not been answered. My fourth point is the ASEAN question, and I think this was discussed a lot in the first session. What's interesting is Prabowo's inaugural speech 10 days ago. He did not mention ASEAN at all. So BRICS or no BRICS, the ASEAN question is already there. But definitely BRICS has made things even spicier for us and our foreign policy. And I do think that, challenges for ASEAN is more from within ASEAN. So that's another discussion altogether. But what's interesting is that, was this question raised when Indonesia formally began its OECD accession? I don't recall. Was this question raised even when Indonesia joined G20? I don't recall that at all. So it's interesting that this sort of questions now become an issue when Indonesia expresses interest in joining BRICS. So my very last point, my fifth point about what's next, in the end, so what? Indonesia is never shy about joining groups. That's one of the criticisms towards our government. We're just joining groups here and there, all sorts of organizations. So one more wouldn't hurt, right? It wouldn't hurt. But then again, of course, there's the signaling. There's the signaling about which way Indonesia is leaning. And what's interesting, I think, in this point, I think President Prabowo has the confidence that he can maneuver or strategize in the midst of the current geopolitical competition. So he might not care about this signaling. He doesn't care what other countries are pointing fingers at Indonesia. You're leaning here, you're leaning there. He doesn't care. He has this confidence that he can maneuver and strategize, among this geopolitical competition. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Joyce. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you, Dr. Shafia. Yes, I actually agree with you. I started out by saying that Indonesia is non-aligned, but I want to close by saying Indonesia is multi-aligned, because it really wants to be in every part of the grouping. And in fact, I think this formal concept, it should soon be a new concept in international relations, since there are more and more, groupings that are coming up. And I think I also see the rationale of Indonesia being part of BRICS because the priorities are really in line, as you mentioned, with the programs of the new government. So this is in the context of the new government, like the food and energy security, the poverty eradication, and human resource development. So of course, there is something to gain for Indonesia as well. But it's only moving forward, what sort of message that it wants to send to the world. So now I would like to pass the time over to Prof. Tong to talk about Vietnam's view of the BRICS. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. First of all, let me thank Ha for inviting me to this forum and for ISEAS for hosting me and being a very good place for me to develop my academic path, career um, with the with my book published here 2021, Flying Blind. Why I'm mentioning this book? Because it is about the decision for Vietnam to join ASEAN, and it is a very good, for me, framework to address this issue, the question of why Vietnam decides to do things in terms of foreign policy. And I think that if I am working on this issue, maybe in the next 5 years I will have an answer. And because it is the foreign policy issue, which is not really open for public to see. And to the internal discussion, especially with this kind of geopolitical context, is somehow sensitive and not really an easy decision to make. So with that, I think um, I find a challenge for myself answering this question. But anyway, I share what I have in mind with you in this forum. The To make the story short, the answer for Vietnam with regard to BRICS admission, BRICS membership is no for this time being. But it is not a completely no, because on the one hand, Vietnam is not officially or even privately um, uh, declares the intention to join BRICS as a member. But it is, on the other hand, it is actively participating in all the activities possible as a partner at the invitation of the hosting countries, especially this year. So, no to membership, but yes to partnership participation. So, the rest of my presentation is focusing on explain why Vietnam takes that stance, and to line with the theme in this forum, I want to express my understanding about the motivations of Vietnam's acting that way. Now, if we pay attention to the statement by the spokesperson of Vietnamese Foreign Ministry, um, the answer is not clear, because she says that Vietnam wants to show that it is an active member of the international community, and Vietnam follows the foreign policy of multi-direction and interdependence, and Vietnam at the same time wants to be more proactive in participating in multilateral arrangements and interested. Vietnam is interested and watching the discussion and the expansion process with regard to BRICS. So it's something like half and half. But my interviews with the MOFA officials seems to suggest that it is the no. And it is proved by the Vietnam's participation in the Kazan summit that there is no mentioning of Vietnamese membership. Even Vietnam sent the prime minister attending. And I think that the level of participation of Vietnam in this Kazan summit is the highest among the ASEAN countries, because we know that the foreign ministers were there, but in the case of Vietnam, the prime minister was there. So in terms of participation, I think Vietnam is at the highest level of participation. And remember also that throughout the year of 2024, Vietnam sent all the important delegations to participate in events organized in Russia. I can name the vice chairman of the External Relations Commission of the party to participate in the meeting of the political parties of BRICS in Vladivostok in June, and then the vice foreign minister participating in the BRICS dialogue with the partners on behalf of the foreign minister in Novgorod in June, and then the Minister of Public Security participating in St. Petersburg in September, and then the Vice President of the Vietnam News Agency participating in this media summit of BRICS also in September. And of course, the participation of the foreign minister in October. So the first point I want to make is that the membership question is no, but the active participation is yes. Talking about the motivations, I would like to make a point here that if we are talking about BRICS, we have to talk about two versions of BRICS. Version 1 is before expansion, and version 2 is after expansion. Version 1 is more benign in my own view, but version 2 is less than that, and that is the exact reason why Vietnam is becoming hesitated about participation. And I have 5 points here to make to explain why Vietnam is concerned and why Vietnam is hesitated. One is that BRICS version 2.0 seems to be more exclusive. It is it is open to global South, and the Russians is not really representing global South, because if we look at the underlying movement, for example, Russia is not there. So when Russia and China was talking about global South, the message is that the United States in specific and the Western powers are not in, and they are not expected to be in. So the exclusiveness is there. Number 2 is about the objectives. The objectives of Russia, the objective that Russia was talking about, and it is reflected in some of the documents, is about a new type of governance, it's about the new order, and then the alternative. And that is something like challenging to the existing order, which is United States-led or which is Western-led. So the objective is concerning. Number three is about the distancing from version 0.01, because 0.01 is about economic cooperation without being a bloc, geopolitical bloc, and from the meeting into something like something institutionalized with the uh, dominating influence of Russia and China. And that is the number three. Number four is the lack of transparency, especially with regard to a new member in the first wave of expansion. Some I heard some complaints from, say, India or Brazil colleagues, academic colleagues, telling me the story that the decision to invite new members were kind of um, 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 dominated by Russia and China, and for the rest of the members of BRIC, they were just informed last minute, and that is worrying. That is worrying. Um, and number five is about the what we call the involving or the forming of the identity for BRICS. That BRICS is so diversified in terms of economic developments level and in terms of political structures in the member countries, and then in terms of internal disputes among the members, India, China, even China, Russia, for example. So it's so diverse, and the question of membership, identity among the members is really a, a salient point. And then the um, uh, the concept about BRICS is still, of course, in the very stage of academic discussion, but later on it can be having some influence in the policy making circle, whether it is a minilateral type of organization or it is a universal type of, multilateralism applied for the global south. So there is something like a identity crisis, and the identity crisis can be bigger with more countries becoming members. So that is the BRICS 2.0 making circles in Vietnam worried about being a membership. And the costs benefit at the cost benefit side, there is not much in terms of gaining more by becoming a member of BRICS, because bilaterally Vietnam is enjoying very good relations with all the members of the BRICS, especially Russia and China, India, to a lesser extent Brazil and South Africa. They are all the uh, important partners of Vietnam. So uh, I don't see any sense of being left out or being missing out or missing the train by not joining BRICS, because we are having good relations with BRICS, key BRICS members, and we know what is going on. We can ask, we can have information from them, and it is still, especially it is still in the developing stage, and especially like in the morning, we know that it is not a free trade uh, arrangement. It is just a meeting and then some projects. And also from the cost benefit side, joining BRICS as a member can uh, can make the situation for Vietnam's conduct foreign policy more complicated because it can be seen as an act of taking side. So that is the explaining why Vietnam is not really decisive on joining BRICS as a member. So what are the motivations for Vietnam's active participation in BRICS activities? And I have 5 points here. Point number 1 is about the um, showing that Vietnam is continuing the foreign policy of uh, opening to the rest of the world, and especially even on a higher level, showing the um, greater participation, greater presence, and greater visibility in the international agenda and context. And that relates to the second point, to become more visible, to be more participatory, it needs the multilateral arrangements, multilateral organization, and BRICS is one of them. BRICS is one of them. So after the Prime Minister participating in the Kazan summit, the foreign minister gave an interview to Vietnamese press saying that it is showing that Vietnam is more active in the international arena and in the multilateral organizations, including BRICS. Um, um, Point number 3 is about bilateral motivation. Why Vietnam is more active in participating in the activities organized by Russia in the year 2024, when Russia is the host of BRICS summit. It is because of the motivation to show to Russia that Vietnam supports the stronger development of Vietnam-Russia relations. And and why Vietnam wants to show stronger solidarity with Russia is of different logics, is of different uh, um, reason, and mostly because of the history of the bilateral relations. Um, and of course of the current situation too. I can discuss it later. And point number 3 is about geopolitics motivation. And of course, it is like I mentioned briefly earlier, that it is about the dynamics of the big powers relation that Vietnam happened to be a part of that. So on the one hand, Vietnam is really cautious on taking sides, or not taking side actually, as other ASEAN countries, but on the other hand, Vietnam really develops relations with all the big powers, including the US, China, and Russia, and India and Brazil as well, to a lesser extent. So membership of BRICS right now is complicating the bigger picture of Vietnam's relations with big countries. And number 5 is about more cost benefit motivation. Joining or not joining is not really making a big difference because Vietnam is enjoying uh, um, good relations, economic, political relations with key members of BRIC and Vietnam. Vietnam also enjoying the good relations with major multilateral organizations, including the UN, IMF, World Bank, and so on and so forth. So that is the five motivations, and I would end my presentation with what next. One is about 2 minutes, yes. Is about wait and see. Wait and see. Participation without membership. And study the modalities for expansion because BRICS has introduced the modality, but we don't know about it. So that is technical side of the story. Then we have to watch for the ASEAN consensus on this. It's a very surprising thing for me to read the chair statement of the ASEAN summit this year, no mentioning of BRICS. So it suggests that ASEAN has not reached a consensus here. Individual ASEAN members can raise some questions about ASEAN's the common stance on BRICS, but we don't see it yet.
The Kazan Declaration also don't mention ASEAN. It's
Of course. And then we have to watch the development of great powers relations, especially US-China relations competition. And we also have to watch the actual development of BRICS. If it is acting or working toward the tendency of being a subset of the universal arrangement, including WTO or UN, that would be okay. But if it is showing signs of being exclusive, being a replacement of them, that would be also. So I would end my presentation here. Thank you very
so
much.
much, Prof. Tong. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be a subset of WTO and the UN. But anyways, I really appreciate your very pragmatic view. And in fact, your view is very refreshing because it's quite different from the other three speakers because you started out by saying no to membership, whereas the other, three countries were saying we want membership. So the partnership deal is only a step towards the membership, but you just want to stop at being a partner and to actively participate. No for now. Things might change in the future. We never know, right? So while that is certainly, very refreshing views, and it gives us a lot of understanding on how, Vietnam actually look at this in terms of the costs and benefits. So I realize that we have 20 minutes left, but it seems like we have about 20 questions online, and I'm sure many of our audiences here also want to ask questions. I already saw that Sharon has raised up the hand. So maybe I will take 3 questions first and see how I can merge it with those questions online as well, because there might be some overlapping themes. So Sharon, can you go first?
Thanks, Joanne. I know I said that I didn't care about ASEAN, but I cannot care about ASEAN
Now
all the
you
time.
care about
so now
ASEAN
I need to
already.
ask
Okay.
a question.
Sure.
Will ASEAN consensus change Vietnam's position in terms of advancing to full membership? And the second one is, the kind of unilateral decision making within BRICS, which is not very transparent to all of us. And it does seem like the original members have more of a veto power over the other expanded members. Does this concern potential members like in Indonesia and Thailand and Malaysia?
Yes, thank you. So also, this question is about modality, so I can leave it to either one of you all to answer. Is that Ha? Oh, and the gentleman there. So maybe Ha first, and then the gentleman in front of Ha.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I have 2 questions for Prof. Tung. First, your presentation gives me the impression that Vietnam's current considerations vis-à-vis BRICS are very much driven by a rational and careful cost-benefit analysis. But we all know that the foreign policy decisions in Vietnam, just as in other countries, but especially in Vietnam, have been very much driven by a top-down political decision as well. Do you foresee that under the new leadership of the party Secretary General To Lam, and given the very close relationship at the top level between the Vietnamese leadership and the Chinese and Russian leadership, would Vietnam's position vis-à-vis BRICS take a quite a dramatic turn towards saying serious consideration of seeking membership as well, rather than based on a very rational thorough cost benefit study that you just mentioned? The second question is about Vietnam and Russia. They have oil and gas projects, mutual investments in each other's territory, and Russia is also the biggest supplier of Vietnam's arms, and that has caused some problems in terms of the payments, cross-border payments, given the ongoing U.S. sanctions against Russia. Do you think that, to ease the to facilitate the payment between Vietnam and Russia, the current priority of BRICS in terms of seeking alternative payment system is something that Vietnam is seriously considering as well? And is there any kind of also thorough study within Vietnam about how Vietnam can benefit from this BRICS agenda? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Har. So, yes, sir, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I will try to be brief. So what is the...
Maybe you can introduce yourself
yes,
quickly.
I'm Taufik Khan, student from ISEAS. And my question is, what is the weight that the South China Sea dispute plays on the country's consideration, I mean, especially for Vietnam, on deciding to engage or not to engage with the BRICS? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the questions. I will leave Sharon's questions to Dr. Shafia, if you are able to answer, the sort of implications for ASEAN member states and also about the modality, because Prof. Tong already has a set of questions from Ha and also from the gentleman about the South China Sea. But I have one online question that is quite similar regarding the dollarization, because just now how you asked about the currency, right, system. So there's an audience, Gloria Lin. She asked whether the de-dollarization has been an agenda for many countries for many decades already, and would these efforts still continue to be more concentrated at the bilateral level between the BRICS country? And also, given that the renminbi is already one of the top traded currencies, so do you see China taking the lead in BRICS plans? While renminbi is not multipolar, right? They are talking about multipolar, but maybe just give your views on that as well. Maybe the short one first to
Sure.
Dr. Shafia.
Sharon's question, maybe I'll focus about the second part of your question about, the original members of BRICS having sort of like different weight in terms of their membership in BRICS. Is this an issue for Indonesia? To be frank with you, it's not in the discussion. So all this time reading some of the statements, reading the pros and cons given by different leaders, foreign ministers, this is not part of the cons list. So, and to try to put it in the current context, again, I mentioned about our current president being a very confident person. He's not going to care about these things, that these members would have more importance, more significance, because he knows he's also important. That's the kind of leader he is, and he knows he can sort of like find a leeway for him to have a bigger voice. And similar with some of the issues that are, might be factors in terms of our interest in BRICS, the South China Sea, the de-dollarization. It's we when Indonesia discussed about BRICS, we haven't gone into the detailed issues like this. Yes, South China Sea is an important issue for Indonesia, but we have managed our relationship with China in a way that it's parallel to our different types of relations as well. Yes, we want to be less dependent on the dollar. We do not have a strategy how to get there. BRICS policies might be of interest, but it's not really listed as, 1, 2, 3 motivations for Indonesia. I mean, that's all I can say for now.
The question, that's the problem when you have a long list and you lose track. Okay, actually, whatever you said, that is actually a question from my colleague Melinda Martinez, and she's asking whether this is all part of Prabowo's personal motivation along with his aides. And, are the new foreign policy appointees balance between pro-Western and non-Western alignment? Do you actually see that balance? And can you also maybe elaborate on whether your membership in BRICS in the future will have any influence in de-escalating the Middle East crisis? If you could take 1 or 2 minutes at most, and then I'll pass it over to Prof.
Middle East, no. I mean, Indonesia is very limited in terms of what we can do or say or even influence on the Middle East. So that's sort of like a short answer. When it comes to balance, Prabowo's narrative has been, he wants to be friends with everyone. So, and balance is, I think, the keyword of his narrative, that he wants to be friends with everyone. He wants to engage every country. So, of course, the terminology balance is there. But I think it doesn't stop there. I mean, his ambition is definitely about Indonesia playing a bigger role, both in the region and globally.
I may share my views about the modality question. The introduction of the modality is a very sign of BRICS having the intention to become more institutionalized. And that is, like I said, that is the example of how BRICS point zero 0.01 is different from 0.201. And then the new members coming in, they also bring their own problems. And then again, BRICS 2.0 is becoming more political, more geostrategic. So that means not only the South China Sea issue can be brought in, other issues as well. The Middle East, and then you can name it. And then it makes the BRICS really more complicated. Now back to the question of Vietnam's asked by Ha. I'm not so sure about the specific or technical issues of the alternative payment with regard to Vietnam, Russia, trade payment in terms of trade, especially when Russia is facing the embargo. I think that the embargo has been for quite a while, and the trade between Vietnam and Russia has been impacted. But still, somehow, the two countries could find some way in order to make sure that the trade relations is carried out. Again, I'm not so sure about the technicality of this. But the question is, the question can be less complicated in the bilateral context. But if the but if BRICS is developing something like an alternative payment method for all the members, and that would be an issue. That would be an issue because, like I said, it reinforces the impression that BRICS is introducing something like an alternative to the existing payment method across the applied universally. This sudden decision by Vietnam with regard to membership, I don't see the reason why Vietnam is rushing toward the membership because of one additional reason, that is the lack of pressure from both Russia and China. Now, the evidence is that if we read the joint statement introduced by the visit of President Putin to Vietnam and by President To Lam to China, we don't see any mentioning of BRICS membership. And what I can read from these two statements is that Russia and China is not pushing Vietnam to join. So when the pressure is not there, Vietnam has more time to think. If we read the Russia-Vietnam joint statement, there is only one mentioning of BRICS, encouraging or welcoming Vietnam to join, to participate in the BRICS Olympic Games. That is the only mentioning of BRICS in the very important joint statement. So that means like I said, the pressure is not there yet, and I think that we don't see it is coming.
Thank you, Prof. Actually, I have two main clusters of questions coming from several participants that I would like to raise. But I thought that, audiences here, you took the time to come and sit here. I should also give you the priority. William, okay, yes. And of Eugene, yes. Both of them are from the RSPS. I think, they should deserve the chance to ask a question. So William, please, and then followed by Eugene.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks to our speakers, William from RSPS. A comment and then a question. I think, okay, putting on my ex-journalist hat, I think that BRICS is at the moment still pretty much brick-a-brac. And it's a lot of assorted items that are of somewhat questionable value. Why do I say that? Because there's talk about de-dollarization, multipolar world, global south and all that, but that's nothing really substantive as it stands in BRICS. There's no secretariat. Get what Professor Tung was saying about moving from a kind of economic basis to geostrategic basis, but to quote a Chinese proverb, it seems like you're feeling the stones as you cross the river. But that said, I think that I was having a mini discussion with my friendly neighbor who doesn't care much about ASEAN anymore. And the discussion was about, there's always the question whenever ASEAN members look at minilaterals like the Quad, AUKUS, China and its various initiatives, that ASEAN centrality is being undermined. I'm not a believer in ASEAN centrality either because I do not know what it means. But I would think that it's become even more pertinent if, as and when ASEAN members actually look for non-ASEAN avenues. And in this case, we are looking at Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, exploring opportunities outside ASEAN. So it's like, when your own members are putting less emphasis on your own family, and looking elsewhere, I think that gives us serious concerns about the viability of ASEAN going forward, simply because ASEAN is not at the forefront of introducing new initiatives, new minilaterals, new ideas on the international stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you, William. I agree with what you said. We can talk for 3 hours about ASEAN centrality in the future. Eugene, please.
Thank you for the presentations. My question is about India. So I think the discussion has been dominated mostly about discussions about China and Russia, and I think rightly so because of their kind of dominance over the BRICS. But I'm wondering whether the BRICS membership could open the door for greater Southeast Asia, India engagement, given that India's engagement in the region has been so far having room to grow, basically. So could there be kind of a platform that both parties could leverage through the BRICS? Thank you.
No, yeah. I'll take a bit of both questions. So, BRICS not substantive, but that's the same with a lot of other things that Indonesia is part of. I'm not even going to mention ASEAN. We're involved in like archipelagic and island states, IORA and whatnots, and can hardly say any of them is substantive. But about looking for opportunities outside ASEAN, I mean, if that's the concern that is given to Indonesia, I think we've been toying with that more with G20 rather than BRICS. G20 presents a more lucrative groupings rather than BRICS. So I guess in a way, yes, you can say a lot of other minilaterals as well, and you can say the same thing about BRICS, but I think that says more about ASEAN than all of these minilaterals. Southeast Asia Indian question, that's a very valid question, and I think that's some of the some of the issues that are not yet thoroughly discussed. I mean, looking at it from an Indonesian point of view, Indonesia-India relations, I mean, on paper, it should be there, right? It should be up there. All the factors are there, but it's not. And that's a question that none of us can answer yet. But I don't think that is something that we can actually achieve through BRICS. And I don't think BRICS gives the avenue for that.
Thank you very much. I know that we are 2 minutes away from our ending time, but because we started a bit later, so if you would indulge us by giving us 5 minutes more. Oh, I see a hand there. Okay, could you keep your question short, sir?
Sorry, thank you. I'm Brian. I'm a program associate at the ASEAN Japan Center, so I flew in from Japan. I'll try to keep both of them short. One's a more personal one, because I'm engaged with a lot of Japanese initiatives to sort of promote ASEAN unity and integration and all that. And I see a lot of diplomatic language being used by Japan, including, to purposely, deliberately include ASEAN India language. But, when Prabowo and other leaders in ASEAN aren't doing so, sometimes it makes me feel that Japan is somehow more interested in ASEAN than ASEAN is in itself. So I think I'm sort of seeking vindication. Is that, should I be feeling that or should I not be feeling that? And the second question is more about BRICS. Like, ASEAN touts international rules-based order as a core part of their interest. Is joining BRICS, with China and Russia so flagrantly sometimes doing un-international law-ish activities a good signal for that? Why not join? If it's for promoting the global south, why not join like the Commonwealth? That's a growing organization as well, or association. My two questions.
Anyone of you want to quickly respond to that?
I just want to make a point about ASEAN, because of course people can be unhappy with ASEAN or ASEAN centrality, but we have to acknowledge the fact there is no replacement for ASEAN yet, so we have to live with it. And just imagine one day we don't have ASEAN, and then we have a lot of problems with the absence of ASEAN. So ASEAN is there for at least for the members and for the partners. It is what I believe. So we also have to look at the ASEAN question from the very facts that because we have ASEAN, so our I mean individual um, negotiating power is rooted from ASEAN. So at least we can have something to say that we are an ASEAN member, and then the partners can be more listening to us individually. Um, and I forgot to mention in the earlier comments about the agenda of the BRICS that are having commonalities with Vietnam's foreign policy, especially with regard to multilateralism. So during the BRICS, the participation in the BRICS meetings as a guest um, from Russia, the Prime Minister of Vietnam introduced 5 points about BRICS, 5 strategic connectivity that Vietnam wished to see BRICS developing. Number one is about the the resources, the strategic infrastructure, both soft and hard, about global supply chain, and about the people-to-people link, and about the reforms of the global governance mechanisms. So I think that it is the theme that can be enjoying consensus among not only the members but also the global south and then the BRICS partners. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, of course, BRICS, because it's so diverse, it definitely can enhance connectivity in that 5 areas that you just mentioned about. Maybe this is where, like, the lowest hanging fruit is when it comes to cooperation. And of course, our gentleman from Japan. Japan is part of many things as well. You're part of Quad and almost the AUKUS Plus, a very great dialogue partner of ASEAN and all that. So I guess all of us are in multi-alignment, and it's just who we want to choose and who can give us more benefits. We are 3 minutes over time, but because I have actually one question that came from 4 or 5 participants asking the same thing. So I just want to address this last question before we close. We could take 2 or 3 minutes. And this question is really about the OECD versus the BRICS. So I think Dr. Shafia will be in a good position because, and this question came from So Yong Yang, it came from Pei Mei Lee, and also came from our colleague Julia Lau. So it's about BRICS versus OECD because we know OECD has very high requirements. It has, you need DAC commitment, you need annual contribution. So what really is the real benefit for OECD? Is it for reputation, or are there real benefits? And of course, BRICS is the lowest, hanging fruit. It's easy to get and all. So what is it like, between choosing between OECD and BRICS? Maybe we can close with this session. And I also want to apologize to other participants who had very great questions, like Mr. Raksmi Him, who talks about internal divisions within BRICS, like diverse political and economic system. This we will save for the part 2 of BRICS seminar in the future. So I will get your views on that OECD part. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe I won't be making comparisons. Let me just focus on OECD for the time being. So yes, definitely, accession to OECD is very rigid. A lot of requirements. As I mentioned, there's this technical review process and so on. But I think trying to put it in a very simplistic way, why it's important for Indonesia. We've been trying so hard to conduct various kinds of reform in a lot of our, bureaucracy. And having a clear process towards it, I think is a serious added value. We can do it ourselves, trying to reform, but if we have a set of rules and regulations to follow, I think that's the biggest benefit that Indonesia can get. Not actually we can try to analyze the benefit after we join OECD, but just trying to get there and making all these kinds of reforms within the country. And I think that's already a big plus for a country trying to conduct reform like Indonesia. We can of course talk about what happens after we join, but I think for now that's already very apparent.
Okay, thank you. You have a minute to also comment on this. I will leave the final minute to you
Yes,
before we
thank you.
close.
Thank you. The OECD discussion in Vietnam is not reached the level where Thailand or Indonesia are, but Vietnam is starting to participate in some capacity with regard to OECD. So I agree with our Indonesian friend saying that OECD is membership is just a tip of what is really important down uh, under the surface, because it is about the development of the country economically, politically, and I think that it is the price for reforms within the country rather than the recognition in the organization, like just being membership is the end, not anything else. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prof. Tong. Yes, I also agree with that view. But of course, things are evolving very fast, right? Like whatever you say, not now, but that doesn't mean it's not for tomorrow. So let's see. So now we have come to the conclusion. So thank you, Dr. Shafia and Dr. Tong, for sharing your insights. I think it's clear that both Indonesia and Vietnam are navigating their foreign policies very carefully to maintain their strategic autonomy while considering the opportunities of BRICS. So the issues that we've explored today will give us a better understanding on how some of these 4 Southeast Asian countries view their roles in the evolving political landscape. And of course, the decision will impact the future of ASEAN, and it underscores the importance of ASEAN strengthening its relations. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but it is the 100th times that I have said that ASEAN needs to maintain relevance in the evolving global order. So with that, I just would like to conclude our session, and I would like to thank all of you here and online for joining us in this seminar. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the seminar. We hope you have enjoyed this program brought to you by the RSPS program at ISEAS. For those joining online, thank you for staying with us today. We wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.